seat. Hold that up.
Order. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First off, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate you on your ascension to the chair of Speaker of the National Assembly.
Thank you.
And also, I would like to congratulate Mr. Leonard Schumann for his position as arriving at the position as Deputy Speaker to the Assembly. And I would also like to congratulate particularly all the new and young members, the new entrants to our debates or participation at the National Assembly. Mr. Chairman, I have to immediately refute some of the grossly erroneous assertions just made by the former Minister of Public Infrastructure, Mr. David Patterson. Mr. David Patterson just said here that when the AP and UAFC came into office, there were no implementable projects. There were projects which were on the way. The West Coast Demerara Road, luckily which they completed. There was the East Coast Demerara Road, which they have not to this day completed. There is the Chenny Jagan International Airport. Had difficulties, they changed the scope of works, reduced the size of the building. It hasn't been completed to this day.
They don't complete anything, they don't plan for that.
There is the Sheriff Street Mandela Road project, which we started for them to continue the implementation. It has not been completed to this day. 5 years have gone.
You don't even complete the plan.
Mr. Speaker, imagine the temerity of this honorable gentleman to come here in this honorable house in the full face of the evidence and the facts on the ground and to say those things that he just said. Shameless. Shameless. Can he tell us, the honorable gentleman, how many megawatts of power the APNU has put into the system since they came into office?
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order and elucidation, sir, he would like to...
He's not sitting. He
He
hasn't taken his
if
seat.
I can tell him...
He has not taken his seat. So you can't go.
Can I get some order, please? Can I get some order? Honorable Member Mr. Patterson.
Yes,
Honorable
sir.
Member Honorable Member Mr. Patterson. The only way I can allow your
Stand in
point of
order.
elucidation is if the current speaking member decides to give way to you. If he doesn't, then you will have to take your seat. Honorable Member Mr. Benn, would you concede to Mr. Patterson?
I will not.
Honorable Member Mr. Patterson, please take your seat. Honorable Member Mr. Benn, continue.
Mr. Speaker, the honorable gentleman spoke about oil and gas, about working group on oil and gas, about having expert knowledge in oil and gas. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, where were these gentlemen who were rounding them out talking about oil and gas when the exploration was being done? When I went out there on the ships doing the seismic exploration, where were these people who suddenly have overnight expert knowledge in oil and gas and to come here to speak in the manner that they speak on this matter? without wanting to engage with those who work on the projects and those who created the discovery. When we found the oil, they said it was an elections gimmick. They said it was an elections gimmick. Now they are the most convinced persons on the face of this earth on questions of oil and gas, something which they're just now learning about. Mr. Chairman, another shameless thing, and I can't deal with all of them without impairing the presentations I want to be. The honorable gentleman should read the NOR Consult report on the Milo Falls project. The honorable gentleman said essentially that the Norwegians agreed with Guyana, the APNU government, to ignore 165 megawatts of renewable power in the Amila Falls project for a 330 megawatt solar, 310 megawatt solar erection in various parts of the country. In a country which is energy poor, which the most significant term in our development equation is the lack of energy. But here is what he said. Here is what he said, that they ignored this. They refused to put the money into the Amila Falls project. And I say to you, sir, the Amila Falls project is a viable project. Thousands of megawatts of renewable energy go over our waterfalls as we speak even now. And that power is renewable, could be brought to use, starting with the Amila Falls project as identified by NOR Consult, and will also allow us to move on to the next power projects, the Tipiru Itiribisi projects, which would allow for thousands of megawatts of export power to Brazil. In which case, we don't have to use gas or oil. Sir, I will never retire. You could go what you want. You could go what you want. You are already in the pre-retirement stage.
People retire. People retire.
Mr. Speaker, this gentleman stood in his place, honorable gentleman, and he said that the Linden to Lethem Road, to Mabura Road, was a project which they initiated. You inferred, sir, that you initiated, that you got the monies. When we knew that we designed and did the feasibility studies with Mott MacDonald in association with Senco.
That is why I sent all the things to the media.
Sir, the studies we did with NOR Consult and with financing which we initiated, the management and the negotiations with DFID for 100 million United States dollars related to making the first phase of an asphaltic road to Mabura and the building of a bridge across the Essequibo River at Kurpakari. That is a fact. And it's in the studies which were done by Mott MacDonald. Another effort, this gentleman, honorable as he supposedly is, to confuse persons in respect of what the projects were. And I would also remind the honorable gentleman and the persons on that side, for the Amila Falls project, the Honorable Member Harman and the former Honorable Member Rupert Rupnarain were flown into the interior, landed on the road at several different places, agreed with us that it was a good project after having read the reports we gave them, and came back to Georgetown and praised the project. And it was reported in the press. Later, perhaps when they got together in their cabal or whatever they do, they decided to abandon the project and leave 19 million United States dollars lying in the bush. Wasted money so far. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I want to continue trying to deal with those untruths which the Honorable Member Patterson presented here, trying to, on this floor of this Honorable House, I want to move on with respect to the Ministry of Home Affairs, for which I now have 13.
Order. Please allow the Honorable Minister to make his contribution. I recognize that the previous contributor had a relatively quiet tone. Please.
Mr. Chairman, I would want to claim back all the time that which resulted from interruptions from the other side. Mr. Chairman, we have re-established the Ministry of Home Affairs as now an unpretentious and a more down-to-earth institution to deal with the issues of crime, to deal with the issues of public safety in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the experience of the last 40 or so days signify perhaps a baptism of fire for the new ministry, given the deplorable state of affairs with which we found it in, and the fact of the issues related to investigations and court proceedings on electoral frauds, riots, fires, blockages, arsons, and other despicable murders and mutilation of youths on the West Coast Berbice, to which we can add just recently the discovery of drug smuggling aircraft, prison unrest, and the overarching problem of the struggle against the coronavirus pandemic. It is important that we should know and that we should identify in the situations that we have in Guyana, when there are violent eruptions, particularly related to electoral issues, that there is a link between politics and crime, particularly at elections time. And I have to say clearly that the racially inspired unrest on the West Coast Berbice identifies against the link between politics and violent crime. and ethnic-related crime in Guyana. And the eruptions which we just witnessed add another sordid chapter to this issue. Mr. Speaker, the loss of the vote of confidence in the National Assembly in December 2018 apparently set in train a number of events which, while they have parallels in our earlier history, are noteworthy for the transparent, relentless criminal attempts in the full glare of national, international, regional observers, stakeholders, medias, and diplomats. The brazen attempts to thwart the will of the Guyanese people expressed at the March 2nd, 2020 elections, where there was indeed an attempt relentlessly several times undertaken to steal the state, to steal the country. Despite the advanced placement of military and political agents in key administrative positions, the penetration and the corruption of the Guyana Elections Commission, and the access to public funds unrestricted, and the use of public assets for political purposes, all those weapons which were formed against the will of the Guyanese people did not prosper.
Did not prosper.
Did not prosper. For this, Mr. Chairman, we have to thank our supporters of the PPPC, the national international community, stakeholders, the European Union, the USA, the US, and others, and particularly Guyanese people, who, in spite of different political views and preferences, took the position in the end that, in spite of machinations and the call to disorder by the AP and UNAFC, that they would not, that the people took the position in solidarity around Guyana's democracy, around peace, that they would not be sucked into a situation which would lead to a breakdown in law and order, and which would have allowed for a continuation of undemocratic governance in the country. The experiences of the people over 2015 and 2020 allowed for the taking of a position around democracy in Guyana, and particularly in respect of the elections. The people said, not this time, not this time, our elections would not be stolen again, that electoral fraud will not be allowed to rise its ugly head in our country. It has been a close call, and recent events identified that the efforts of the sanctimonious gangsters are not yet at an end. Messrs. Former President Granger and the Honorable Member Harmon alighted on the communities of Belladrum, Cotton Tree, and others on the west coast of Berbice, and in their aftermath, of their engagement on the issue of the murders, the vile murders of the Henry boys, the narrative that took precedence was that the murders were racially inspired, that certain communities had to put in place self-defense measures, that justice, no peace, would be the order of the day. And the result was the streets, the roads were blocked, were in flames with roadblocks.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, please. Order 41, please. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker.
I'm trying to hear what the point of order is. I just hear the section you're citing, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. I want to hear what is the point of order.
A point of clarification, please. Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, I can
Yes.
only allow a point of clarification on this standing order if the standing speaker decides to give way to you. Honorable Mr. Benn, Minister, would you give way to the Leader of the Opposition?
I will not.
All right.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you'll have to take your seat. Honorable Member Mr. Benn, please. Honorable members, please, I could hardly hear Mr. Benn. I know he hasn't. So please, order. Let us respect the
Mr.
presenters.
Chairman, I want to, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure the members of this honorable House and all Guyanese that the justice
Honorable members,
which
please
is
order.
required and must be given in relation to the vile murders of the Henry boys and in respect of those, the harassing, the persons who were beaten and robbed, those who suffered property damage, that there will be justice related to all of those things. Justice for all. Justice for all who were hurt in respect of the disturbances on the west coast of Berbice. The important thing, however, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, what I want to point out is that the politics of victimhood, irrational, the politics, but I can only call it the carrion crow politics, which immediately presumes when something happens that it has political motivation, racial inspiration, and all those other things. I think that was the unfortunate aspects of certain engagements on the coast, which led to great deterioration in the circumstances in safety and security in the west coast of Berbice, and a great deal of problems. And I want to encourage my erstwhile friend, Mr. Harmon, the honorable member, that he should not follow the path of his former leader of becoming an ahistorical leader of the AP and UAFC. Mr. Speaker, in defense of the budget and in support of the budget, I have to point out that it seeks to restore the economic fundamentals of our economy on a sustainable and growth-oriented path. That the depredations of the past 5 years, attacks on the enduring pillars of the Guyanese economy, sugar, where 7,000 plus workers were fired, and without paying attention to the interrelated nations and the multiplier effects of that industry in the economy, the attacks on rice, the attacks on bauxite, where they allowed the road to be, the Borbis River to be blocked, and brought an end to the production of the Rusal Company, and the loss of work and wages and sustenance of families at Kokwani, Kurubuka, Ururu, Mapletown, Linden, and beyond, and New Amsterdam. All those persons lost their jobs as a result of that action. And one is left to wonder why the government then allowed some miscreants to continue for months the blockage of a river to international and ordinary traffic. But the workers and their workers lost their jobs, and the families lost income and sustenance. In 5 communities, Mr. Speaker, we have now a change from that which is a parasitic approach to the relationship between the government and the economy, where taxation was oppressive, where nothing real brought about development for people, where there was pervasive job loss throughout the length and breadth of Guyana. And for those who are making those noises on that side, they should go and look into the eyes of the children of the sugar workers and the bauxite workers on the Borbis River. Go and look in the Picni eye and tell them the things that you're saying here now. Mr. Speaker, I want to Mr. Speaker, going to the Ministry of Home Affairs, the new ministry, I would say that the ministry was delimbed. That Minister Felix had a separate ministry which took disparate parts of the ministry. It was disjointed and misused. SOCO became a political persecution agency for the government then. It is abused. The community policing groups, the whole apparatus has collapsed. But the diverse communities which the community policing groups represented do not rely, do not expect, do not have any confidence any longer in the community policing groups. And the community policing groups are 80% inactive at this moment. The stewardship of the Honorable Member Ramjatan in the Ministry of Public Security is characterized by a degradation of the critical assets of the ministry, a degradation of the critical aspects of the ministry and its effectiveness. And we have to work hard to redevelop those. The National Commission of Law and Order was established, and Mr. Ramjatan perhaps knows this document. No meeting of the National Commission of Law and Order for 5 years. A commission which enjoys bipartisan participation. No meeting for 5 years. No expansion of the station management committees to bring oversight to the police stations and policing. Mr. Speaker, we need to overcome the lethargy, malaise in significant sections of the ministry to bring about new energy, new thinking, and encouragement with regards to the professionals and workers, to inspire critical thinking and data-driven approaches to the issue of public safety and crime fighting, to bring an end to the partisan engagement and partisan spirit in the way we have approaches to the issue of public safety and security. Mr. Speaker, the Guyana Police Force is mandated now to restore a professional culture and pride to its institution. There are reassignments of responsibilities on the way which are not yet concluded. The regional-based system has now been put in place. We want the Guyana Police Force to be service-oriented, helpful, from the hostile, predatory, compromising, disdainful posture that is present in too many places of the agency. Police corruption is a major problem. The lack of diversity in the police force and the other related agencies is a problem. And the issues of complaints of wrongful dismissals and unfair advancement activities is still a problem. We have asked throughout the force and other agencies for the establishment of a 10-point iterative improvement program and plans to be embarked upon. Training and retraining and exchanges with regional and other police forces will be undertaken. And by regional, I mean at the CARICOM level and even by extension further on. An improvement in public relations, communications, and to some extent, a civilianization of certain aspects of the force will be undertaken so as to free up trained police to put boots on the ground to do proper police work. Body cameras are being used. Vehicle cameras will be installed in the vehicles. GPS tracking and certain citizen activity capture will be accepted. Random drug testing and program health checks will also be undertaken. The police have had the unfortunate experience during election time of being dragooned, mustered, and marched to vote. Policemen were used in deplorable ways, both at the Ashman's building, GCOM headquarters, and even here in this building, in respect of electoral issues. At the moment, the Guyana Police Force is basically at full strength with an establishment of 4,956 ranks and an actual strength of 4,020.
Honorable Minister, I had given you back some of the time from the interruptions, so you were at full strength then. But you would need an additional 5 minutes to conclude. Can someone so move?
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the 5 minutes more for the honorable member to conclude his speech. It might be appropriate for me to ask now also that we suspend the standing order and continue tonight until the other two speakers are finished. So I move that motion, sir.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, the motion is moved that we suspend the standing order, which currently has us finishing at 8 o'clock, that we suspend it so that the other two presenters can complete their presentations. All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it. Honorable Minister, you can continue towards conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Guyana Prison Service finds itself in extremely difficult conditions in its facilities. Fires at both the Georgetown and Lusignan prison, and we may remember 17 persons lost their lives in the Georgetown prison fire, have resulted in a degradation of the facilities, in overcrowding, and very difficult conditions. At the moment, at the Lusignan prison, 572 prisoners lie in close proximity to each other with little protection from the weather. We are taking steps even now to build a new temporary facility, and the intention is to build a large new prison building at Lusignan. A program is on the way at Mazaruni, the Georgetown prison, and also eventually at New Amsterdam with respect to putting in new prisons. And this indeed was a program started by Mr. Ramjatan after the fires, the honorable member. My only concern about it is that they are extremely expensive, and the projects are delayed by over 2 years and counting. We still believe in terms of the rehabilitation of prisoners. We have to have a better understanding of the social economics relating to crime. We have to use the sociologists to have a better understanding of the issues related to crime, particularly amongst young people. And again, I say that the amount of persons in our prisons are 256 persons per 100,000 of the population, which is higher, much higher than the global average, which is about 160 persons per 100,000 of the population. Mr. Speaker, we intend to procure more equipment for the Guyana Fire Service. There have been difficulties seen as a result, perhaps, of the lack of proper training, engagement, and assertiveness, which result in perhaps complete loss of buildings, particularly the issue on the Sheriff Street recently. And we, in relation to new fire stations being set up at Lethem and other places, we are examining the issue of putting in a system of volunteer firemen. Mr. Speaker, I just want to quickly point out that there is a continuation of the citizen security program, which is supposed to secure lives and livelihoods, particularly for youth, and to prevent the tendency to go towards criminal activities. This program was started in 2014 under Minister Rohi, and I was glad recently to be able to partake in the graduation of a number of youth in relation to this program, but I still think that the direction of the program should be towards more sustainable, practical engagement in relation to the issue of sustainable livelihoods, and that is something which we would want to see. I spoke about the issue of the community policing groups, about its complete practical ineffectiveness. I pay some attention to the issue of some issues relating to the licensing of firearms. It appears as though 2020 was a banner year for the issuances of firearms at the hand of the minister without the engagement of the Firearm and Licensing Board. 61% of all firearms issued in 2020, in the 7 months so far, were issued at the hand of the minister without the engagement of the Firearm and Licensing Board. There are all kinds of talk about why this has occurred, and certainly it is examined and thought of as a strange issue. And there are many complaints about it, but I want to assure this Honorable House that this is not a practice I will continue or undertake. That said, Mr. Speaker, I want to fully support and commend this budget to the House. I think that our adversaries on the other side do not have a full appreciation of the nature of Guyana, the nature of its economy, the nature of its people, the fact that our people indeed do love and need each other. And I have to say, particularly for myself, that what we want on this side of the House is the delivery to the next generation of Guyanese a better life than we ourselves have had. That is our responsibility as leaders, as older persons, those who represent the best of our society in this House, is to hand over to the next generation a better life than we have had. And the better life, as we see it, and as encapsulated in this budget, comes through the work of the People's Progressive Party Civic in government, with Irfan Ali as president and at the helm of our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.